There are a lot of superhero movies. With Avengers Endgame in the past and a standalone Joker movie getting several Oscar nominations, superhero movies are in a weird place right now. However, if I'm honest, I look at Marvel's upcoming slate and outside of a few exceptions, I don't feel excitement. I'm fatigued in a strange way, not that I don't want any more superhero movies in the Marvel universe, but now that they've made their money and earned the audience's trust, I want them to go to strange places. I want them to experiment. Only one comes to mind. I've been reading Al Ewing's The Immortal Hulk run this month, and it's changed so much of what I think the Hulk can be in storytelling. For those of you who haven't read it, imagine the Hulk story, but told as a body horror science fiction tale set in the desert that tackles police brutality, capitalism, protesting, white privilege, and generational gaps between parents and children. Seriously, it's great. Comic books are in a really interesting place right now, with certain writers being brought on to reinvent and spin old characters into new tales, and I'm loving it. It's just something that I wish the movies could do. As much as I didn't like Joker, I can appreciate how it feels different from every other comic book movie, even if it does feel like every Scorsese movie. I had a strange fascination with this movie. I saw it when I was 7 years old and quickly got into an obsession with the Hulk. I played the PS2 game, which is a fun sequel to the movie, bringing in more characters from Hulk lore, and for the life of me, my 7-year-old brain could not explain why. It wasn't just the glee of seeing Hulk smash stuff, it was something about the tone, the dark cinematography, the eerie score. It felt almost like I was watching a movie made for grown-ups. I'm not going to claim this movie as some kind of underrated masterpiece, but in terms of portrayals of Bruce Banner, I would say it is both the most unique take and the most accurate. When you think of the Hulk now, you think of Mark Ruffalo either making jokes or smashing stuff. A She-Hulk series is on the way that gives me hope, but due to Hollywood rights being confusing as fuck, I don't think we're ever going to get a Hulk movie like this again. I feel very strongly about how I like portrayals of Bruce Banner. Back in the 60s, the creation of this character was inspired by the likes of Jekyll and Hyde, the Wolfman, Frankenstein, and the old Golem lib. Thinking about this, it's very fitting that Universal picked up the rights considering their history with movies about tragic monsters back in the 30s, and hopefully again with The Invisible Man this year. For me, that's who the character of Bruce Banner is. I'm not interested in seeing Hulk smash up a bunch of buildings, as entertaining as it can be. The Hulk is at his least interesting when he is treated like Godzilla, a mindless smashing machine ready to wreck everything up. When he is at his most interesting, he's a man struggling with bottled up rage cementing from being afraid of becoming the monster his father was. MCU Hulk started out promising, with Mark Ruffalo showing off a very vulnerable performance in The Avengers that earns Hulk becoming a smashing monster hero, but as the movies have went on, I feel his character's been reduced to a walking smashing joke, and I don't feel we've explored this Bruce Banner's struggles enough. His world has been reduced to a supporting Avenger, and other elements from his universe like Rick Jones, Brian Banner, his endless pursuit by the military have been left out in the dark. I understand that this is because of Universal and the movie rights issue, but that has resulted in a Hulk that feels hollow compared to the rich layers of his comic book history. In Ang Lee's Hulk, he wanted to make a movie that felt like an art house movie about the monster within, and it's telling to me that the least interesting parts of the movie are when it goes full Hulk smash. There are entertaining scenes for sure, but in terms of what the superhero genre was at this time, these scenes do feel a bit reductive of the story that Ang Lee wants to tell. For example, compare the opening of this movie with Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, arguably the movie that set the stage for the way superhero movies would be made. Raimi's movie is full of awe, excitement, action, and wonder with a little hint of tragedy. Lee's movie is eerie, dark, tragic, with a dirty green color palette. And I use this comparison as Danny Elfman is key in both of these openings working, and his music gives character to the identity that the movie is presenting. We know Spider-Man will become an awe-inspiring, relatable superhero working through tragedy, and Elfman's theme solidifies that. Bruce Banner, however, will become a man on the run for the rest of his life with a monster trapped inside of him, and not an Uncle Ben or family member to talk about it with. Considering his last family member in this movie is the main villain, it's a fun comparison with the role Uncle Ben plays in Raimi's first Spider-Man movie. Also, we don't have supervillains in this movie. All of us remember the Abomination from 2008's The Incredible Hulk and the tease of the leader that went nowhere, but in 2003's Hulk, no big supervillain. Using Bruce's father as the antagonist directly ties to the struggle of Bruce Banner even beyond the Hulk. The tragedy of this character is that he's a product of abuse, and the reason I connect to that is that Hulk's release is like getting rid of bottled up anger. The smashing stuff in this movie feels like a response to the many people pushing Bruce to his limits. David Banner doesn't have the scene-chewing glee of a Willem Dafoe Green Goblin, or the theatrical appeal of an Ian McKellen Magneto. Ultimately, he's as vulnerable as Bruce is. In his desperation to make a mark on the world, he ends up cursing his own son and loses everything because of it. But then years later when he sees the Hulk, it's like him finally realizing after his world has been wrecked, he has made his mark. Nick Nolte's performance feels like a broken man finally achieving something. Evident from Ang Lee insisting he grow his hair out and stop shaving, he feels completely isolated from the rest of the world. Whilst we have the common antagonist of General Ross pursuing the Hulk, it's this hero-villain relationship that sets this movie above. Everything David Banner does isn't to kill the Hulk, but it's to release the monster. He wants to admire his creation, he wants his work to be seen even if people get hurt from it. He no longer views Bruce as a son, but almost as his experimental property. He relishes in being a behind-the-scenes villain, using gamma-infused dogs to battle the Hulk, but even when Hulk beats that, he's proving his point. He's put Bruce in a lose-lose scenario. If he gives in to his rage to beat every challenge, Bruce's fear about becoming a monster underneath come true. And if he refuses to give in, people will either die or his rage will be so bottled up inside that when he eventually does become the Hulk, whatever destruction that comes of it will be left irreversible. Hulk in this movie takes a lot of cues from other types of monster movies, like the emotional connection between him and Betty Ross could be seen as reminiscent of King Kong. Betty even tries to make the military stop fighting the Hulk as there is no way to kill him, and this endless cycle of violence will only create more destruction. Whilst the action can look a little dated compared to today's standards, having the character's actions comment on the violence caused instead of reveling in it is used to have each character respond to how they feel about it. Betty sees violence as wrong, Bruce sees it as something he can't control, David sees it as an experiment, and General Ross sees it as almost necessary. It's almost like how Jurassic Park used each character's differing perspective on playing God to comment on the theme of the movie and reveal differing character archetypes. The last thing I want to mention is the final confrontation between Bruce and David Banner. They've both been caught by the military, and this is finally where each character reveals their true colours. Bruce has caught on that his father is only interested in his son as a power and not as a person, and David realises that in order to get the Hulk to come back, he has to fight him himself. The scene itself has problems, being very dark and hard to make out what's happening, but what's going on between the characters saves it for me. Bruce does not want the Hulk, and gives in to his father's wishes, giving him all his pure anger and power, which ends up killing him. His father's last words could be seen as how bottled up rage can tear you apart piece by piece from the inside. Instead of setting it in the city and relishing in the Hulk's smashing power, we keep it small scale between two characters' ideologies battling it out, and Bruce finally standing up to his abuser. I'll take character growth in a final battle scene over a lot of smashing any day, but that's just me. So what's the storytelling lesson we can take away from this? I think it's this. Small stakes given large roles can be just as appealing as large stakes. Not every comic book property needs to end in battles and destruction, but an ideology between the hero and the antagonist coming to a halt. Ang Lee's Hulk is the comic book movie stretching its muscles. I wouldn't say it's ahead of its time, as I can't imagine a movie like this being made now, but it's a good experiment. Instead of thinking about how the Hulk could fit into the modern superhero movie context, Ang Lee opted to make a movie purely driven by the themes of the Hulk story. And as much as you can criticize this movie for its shortcomings, it has something that I feel a lot of modern day comic book movies are missing. It has an identity. When I think of this movie, I think of that eerie, horror, tragic sci-fi in a story about abuse and bottled up rage. When I think of the last movie the Hulk was in, all that comes to mind is this. So I'd suggest you give this movie a second look. Don't think of comparing it to what comic book movies are now. Judge it on its own merits, and who knows, you might surprise yourself. Also, be open to checking out comic books. I already mentioned Immortal Hulk, but there's loads of cool new takes on characters who got less than critical acclaim in their movies. Donny Cates' take on Venom and Carnage is some of the best storytelling I've ever read. Nick Spencer's Sam Wilson as Captain America comic takes risks and talks about things I could never see the MCU doing. By not allowing the movies to fully explore these themes, I think they will eventually start to decline. Comic book movies have to evolve into something more to keep going. And emotional abuse is something a lot of audiences can relate with, and seeing it be overcome is very powerful. We've seen enough of superheroes all showing off their powers to beat the bad guy. I think now is the time we have to look more inward at a character's struggle in order to create these experiences. I guess that's the lesson here. Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out this video. If you agree or disagree, I'd love to hear your takes in the comments below. With everything going on in my life now, I'm finding it harder to create time for making videos, so if you can, there's a lot of rewards you can get by becoming one of my Patreons, including PDF copies of scripts, video suggestions, and getting to hang out with me to shoot the shit about storytelling, comic book movies, comics, movies, TV, or whatever. All the links are below, and as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.